If you have a lower than average GPA or GMAT score that you're not happy about, or work experience that hasn't really lasted for 5 or 6 years and you're considering business school, this video is for you. If you're new here, my name is Abhinav and I'm Chief of Staff in the Times of India and a student at Stanford's Business School. I got into both Harvard and Stanford, and here are the few things that I used to fix weaknesses in my application and something that I hope would also help you in your business school journey. Firstly, if you have a low GPA, that's something to not worry about. You see, the GPA is only an indicator of how well you have performed in the past. It's something that would not indicate or generally predict very correctly how you are going to perform in the future. Yes, it's a good indicator that business schools use to evaluate how well you've done academically over a long period of time, because that's the longest period of time that they have available of your academic potential before you enter business school or your higher education. It's oftentimes also not the best because you've evolved and changed as a person. So if you have a not so good GPA score, what you need to do is 3 things. Focus on taking additional coursework so that you can show to schools that you've improved over a period of time. 2, explain your GPA. You know, in every business school application, they have this section if there were extenuating circumstances or things that you need to explain yourself. And if the GPA is something that you're concerned about, don't worry too much about it and feel very okay to really apply your mind and share with others as to why that GPA was not that good. And thirdly, which brings me to my second point, get a high GMAT or standardized testing score, which is the second point, that if you have a lower than average GMAT, make sure that your GPA is on the higher side. And if you have a lower than average GPA, make sure your GMAT is on the higher side. Even if not on the higher side, it should be at the minimum average or maybe 10 to 20 points below average. Now, when I say this, it's important we understand that the GMAT and GPA are only thresholds. They're not in any way cutoffs as we would generally think of them, or true indicators of your actual performance potential. So to fix the GMAT score, consider taking it more than once if your GMAT score is on the lower side. If in the second attempt as well, your GMAT did not go as well as you had planned, consider taking it for the third time, because what that shows is persistence over a period of time, and that is what business schools are also looking at, even if your academic prowess or your ability to take standardized tests is not as strong as you would want it to be. And so if you have taken the GMAT 4 times, and if your GMAT is not on the average or a bit below average level or threshold, and you have a decent GPA but not so great GPA, realize that it's not the end of the world, because ultimately what you're indicating to the schools is that you're willing to be at it, to persevere, and to commit yourself to one cause. And that is more important, because if you can explain your GPA, if you can take the standardized test multiple times, be at it, and then get the score, whichever one is to the best of your potential, it indicates that you're willing to work on the weaknesses. And oftentimes that is a more important skill than actually just scoring way above average in your GPA or the GMAT and then expecting that you would be able to make it into a top business school. Surely that is a predictor of success, but oftentimes there are also cases who score below average but are willing to show that they persevered and they too make it. The third concern that I often get is having not that much work experience. In India, people usually go into their MBAs right after undergraduation or 1 or 2 years of work experience. Whereas in the US and Europe, what tends to happen is that people take about 3 to 4 years before they consider applying for an MBA. Now, if you're concerned about your work experience in that particular domain and you think that you don't have that much work experience, understand that your work experience will be matched up and compared with your peers. So if you've worked for 3 years, don't worry, it's not an automatic disqualification. You will be pegged against other people who have also worked for 3 years. So when you see statistics that the average years of work experience for a Harvard or Stanford MBA is 5 years, that doesn't mean that you also need to have 5 years of work experience. What matters is whether in the work experience that you have had, be it for 2 or 3 years, you have performed well, you have persevered, and you have enough and interesting stories to tell about how you have grown as a leader, as a business professional, and as an executive. And if you can do that, no matter your work experience, although I do recommend at least having 2 to 3 years of work experience, no matter the amount of work experience, what will set you apart is the quality of that. And that is what truly matters in business school applications. The fourth concern that people usually text me about is also having just mundane or routine work examples. And I understand that most of our lives, most of our professional lives are naturally the same. We tend to have the same challenges with people, projects, ideas, thoughts, or situations. And how different can you really be if you're in one industry, say banking or tech or investment banking or consulting? Usually the challenges are the same. So how can you really differentiate and think of more unique work examples which you can fit into your stories or essays? And I think the answer to that is not the external situation that you're part of, but how you responded to that particular situation internally. Maybe you responded in the same way that most other people did, but the way you reached that response has been different. Maybe you responded in a totally different way, but the way you responded internally and your internal motivations were different. And that is what matters. If you can show thoughtfulness, deliberate intention, clarity of thought, and an ability to really be reflective in your journey when you're responding to these mundane work situations, that is what will work through and show through your application, and that is what will make the cut. So don't worry if you think that you have the routine or the mundane work examples. What matters is if you can show thoughtfulness in those very situations. And the final concern that people often talk about is that they have a typical path of consulting, banking, tech, or entrepreneurship, and so on and so forth. Say you're in a family business and you think that that's a pretty routine situation that most other people are in. Sure, that might be true, but that should not detract you from applying to business school, because once you really go through your journey, think about it, reflect on it, and only then and then would you be able to really figure out how exactly your story is unique. And more often than not, it's the process of applying to business school that makes you feel and believe that your story is unique, even though you may be in the typical industries that make up the majority of the class. So here's 5 ways how you can really address these weaknesses, quote-unquote weaknesses, in your business school application. Don't worry too much about these. Ultimately, the process is indeed holistic, something that I've learned from having spoken to admissions officers, students, professors, and deans, and that is truly how the process works. Let me know what you think in the comments below, and if there's any way I can add value.